So normally, normal people will say, okay, if it's not an area that I'm good at or I'm an expert in, I'm gonna just walk away and give that opportunity to somebody else. But Tom Morris decided to say yes, and then figure it out later. So what happened in your mind back then when you respond to them that way?
Well, I thought to myself, okay, these are young business people who have been picked out as the future leaders of their businesses in the community. They want to have a session on ethics, on how to do the right thing, how to make the tough decisions in an ethical, honest, honorable way. That's not what my specialty was. I could have told them to call 3 other people at Notre Dame who did have that as a specialty. But I thought, here, why should I pass up this opportunity to try to do something good? Because maybe if I look into this, I'll learn something, and then I can pass that on to them. So it will not only be good for them, it'll be good for me to stretch myself a little bit. And I'll tell you something, this has become a career pattern for me. When people say, hey, have you ever spoken on disruptive change, how to deal with hard change? And I would say, no, never have. Would you be willing to put together something? Sure, okay, I'll look into it. I've always been open. A car dealer, it was an Oldsmobile dealer for General Motors. He called me and said, we have motivational speakers at our big meeting every year. They talk about success. They say, set goals, aim high, believe in yourself. He said, there's got to be more to it than that. Did the great philosophers ever talk about success? I said, I don't know. That's not the kind of thing I studied. Do you want me to look into it? He said, yeah, look into it. So I looked into success, and I gave a talk for the Oldsmobile dealers. They got so excited. I said, oh, maybe I should give this talk to other groups. And I did for other groups, and they all got excited. So I wrote a book about it called True Success, A New Philosophy of Excellence. It was my first non-academic book. I had written 10 or 11 books for other professional philosophers on deep, technical, philosophical topics. But I thought, these people are getting so excited about ethical success. So I blended ethics and success because the ancient philosophers did. They thought the only kind of success that is sustainable has to be rooted in good behavior, in ethical, honest, reliable, dependable behavior. So I wrote a book, True Success, and it became very popular. And then I realized, okay, there's another side of success other than just goal setting. The other side of success is relationship building. Nobody ever succeeds by themselves. We always succeed because of partnerships and assistance from other people. So I looked into that and wrote a book about that called If Aristotle Ran General Motors. And again, this was all new to me. This was not what I studied in college or in graduate school. It was a side of philosophy that people had forgotten about, the practical side of philosophy. Everybody was doing the technical side, logic, metaphysics, epistemology, aesthetics, asking very theoretical questions. But there's a whole side of philosophy that's very practical that we had forgotten about for 100 years. So I was able to be the pioneer to rediscover the practical side of philosophy, the wisdom side, the idea of philosophy, not just as a way of thinking, but as a way of life. And so that has enriched my own life immensely ever since.
And I realized what I loved to do was talking to the landlord coming to me every day. We talked about life, we talked about things, and I learned every time to speak more fluent, and that had energy. But you're right. How do you create opportunities? Because you cannot force destiny, but you can create opportunity. And literally, I think that's a big part of what you can take out of this situation, of this story. If you're in this type of, when you lose your job, when you move to a new town and you don't know what to do, you can think yourself into a rat hole. very quickly. Oh, how about this? How about that? You scribble. I mean, I love to scribble, but most of the time after the book is full, I just throw it away because it's rubbish. But don't think yourself into a situation, but act yourself into a situation by making connections. The number one fountain of opportunities is not your brain. Is not what's in your head. That's my takeaway. The number one fountain of opportunities is you engaging with other people. A thought in isolation is useless. A thought in a relationship is worth a gold, or could be worth a gold. Like, how did I get the job? I mean, I didn't get the job by someone scouting for a lost husband man, a household man, somewhere in this wonderful city of Malang. But it was me being out there, talking to people, connecting. The magic is in a relationship. The same, so it was also, I mean,
Yes.
Can you imagine that one day I was under a shower and saying, Holger, I've got a fantastic idea. You should write a New York Times bestseller. Oh yeah, I love the idea. No, that's not how the universe works. That's not how the universe works. You serve, you have an idea, you put your head on the table, take a risk, do stupid things like sending a package with penguin masks to the world-renowned professor of leadership. That's how, in the end, I co-created a New York Times bestseller.
So when I was a little girl, very young, up until primary school, so when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, my family would come up to Cape Cod in our country, which is a part of Massachusetts that sticks out into the water. There's lots of beaches, water, the ocean. My grandparents, my mother's side grandparents lived here on Cape Cod, sort of where I live now. And I had been born and raised in Maryland, but when I retired, I finally did retire up here to Cape Cod because of those childhood memories with my grandfather. So my granddad had a rowboat, and he would take me out when I was a little girl. My grandma would make us sandwiches, like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and my granddad would row the boat out into the bay, not the ocean, but a bay about a mile or two long, like the one I live on now. And he would teach me how to row. And for anybody who's rowed when they're young, you get into a rowboat, you have an oar in each hand. And when you're really little, first of all, the oars are heavy. Second of all, one oar always hits the water before the other, and then your boat goes the wrong way, and you just like wonder, am I ever going to get this little rowboat to go in a straight line? Because there's so many things that I'm just, I can't do this. And so my granddad would show me how to balance the oars and how to get my timing down and be patient. And he was very calm, cool, and collected. So he was a wise man. My granddad was a really wise man, which is interesting to say because he didn't have global travel experience or anything, but he was older. And I really think there's something to do with wisdom that you just don't have as a young person. There is wisdom. It takes time, over a lifetime. So my granddad was a wise man in his own way. And wisdom isn't something you can just put in a jar and sell. My granddad had his own form of wisdom, and that was knowing how to teach a young girl, how to pass it on to a young girl to help her have an experience on the water where I could eventually dominate those oars and I could row. And then once we rowed out into the middle of the bay, we could eat our sandwich. I could dive down and swim and find clams and have a great time. And it was all because I learned how to row out into the water and to do something hard and get there and then have the experience, the fun of being there. But yeah, my granddad taught me that. He taught me the perseverance, that there's a reward once you learn something. He taught me to love the water, because otherwise I wouldn't have had a connection with the water and wouldn't have thought about the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy. And that little experience as a girl that my grandfather gave me set the course for my entire life. So what I would say is, for anybody out there who's watching right now, there's somebody in your life who's younger than you, who's more inexperienced than you, who's less capable than you, that you can guide and mentor and pass on your wisdom. You might not have a whole lot of wisdom, but you have got more than they do in different ways. So I would challenge people to find a way to pass on something to somebody else who needs it, either at work or at home, a young little girl like me or an older person that needs some encouragement. So there's all kinds of ways you can pass your wisdom along, and you never know what kind of an impact it's going to make. And my granddad taking me out on the ocean, on the water when I was young, set the course for my entire rest of my life. And he would never know that he had made that impact on me, because he ended up dying before I graduated from the Coast Guard Academy. So he never knew the impact he made. And so that's another thing about this delayed gratification. A lot of the things you do today, you're not going to ever see the benefits from, but you have to look inward and do what's right, do the right thing, and understand that a lot of what you're doing is planting seeds for the future. And that's what it's all about, is giving back the wisdom. And it doesn't mean you have to reap benefits from it. You need to learn to be selfless, and that's where that self-reflection comes in, like time in the pool, the time I've spent on sailboats, reflecting back on who I am. And then at this older age of life, that's why I wrote the book, is to give back the leadership lessons and maybe some of the wisdom that I garnered during this 40 years serving in uniform.